Shaq.
Yeah.
Like Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq. But I assume it's not spelled with a Q.
No, as in B-52s, but without the love.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Yeah, an apathetic Shaq. I got you. All right. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy. That's John over there. John. And we are here to do what we always do, which is listen to music that we share with one another, if it's not a Friday, that is, and go off, give it a listen, then come back and dissect it amongst ourselves, hopefully for your entertainment. John, you're going to be on deck as far as offering up a song for me to check out today. What will it be?
Band called Shaq.
Shaq. Like,
Yeah.
like Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq. But I assume it's not spelled with a Q.
No, as in B-52s, but without the love.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Yeah, an apathetic Shack. I got you. All right. And what's the name of the track?
the track is I Know You Well.
Okay.
And fans of this track, I'm sure there's at least three. Um, this is the extended 12-inch mix.
Okay. I'm sure you'll explain the difference between whatever preceded it and it on the other side, but let me go off and give this extended mix a listen, and I will come back and let y'all know what I think. This is an interesting start. I mean, obviously the record's spinning on the video, so you can you're picking up on that crackling sound that is so distinctively the soundtrack to a record spinning on a table. And then there are these really interesting ethereal resonant kind of like twinkling sparkling keynotes. Very interesting start. Let me pull that back. I kind of just want to hear all that. The through the cracking, I want to hear the resonance. I'm trying to figure out what that's coming from. If it's like a keyed instrument. I didn't see it going here, but I'm quite happy with where we've ended up. This sounds like Peter Buck and Paul McCartney are collaborating on something here. The shimmering kind of jangly guitar uh, with that very late 65, 1966 Beatles sound is what is giving me this vibe of a Buck McCartney collaboration. Uh, yeah, it's like Taxman, or it's not really. The three songs that are coming to mind are Taxman, Day Tripper, and oh god, Paperback Writer probably. But I need to hear more of it. But I mean, the first one that smacked me in the face was Taxman.
Let me say how it could be, 'cause I know you well and I feel it's alright.
There's even some George Harrison to this vocal delivery as well. Which is great. You know what I mean? I'm loving this.
There's a plan to get you, and I know you Then I ran to find you, 'cause it's such a long way to get back to. It's the moon surrounding, and I know it well, I know it's alright. And I've gotta get the feeling tonight.
This is very psychedelic, which is also aligns with that era of the Beatles when they started to shift their sound pretty drastically from what preceded it. But like you hear it with the circular guitar motif, and how it almost has this like refracted or reflected light situation happening. You feel like you can see sparkles and bends of light just in the way the guitar tone is coming off so bright. But there's also this vocal delivery where there's like like multiple vocal tracks and these ahs and all this that are getting added, and that also fills out this very psychedelic vibe that they're killing right now. It sounds great.
The other day, a drummer told me that he was dreaming.
Very dreamscapey, and then I think he said something about a drummer said something about dreaming. I'm gonna have to give that another go. But yeah, the way that the music painted this picture of a dreamscape, and then he alludes to a dream lyrically. I mean, you couldn't get more spot on with that. And, success to them for having created a sound that already connoted dreaming before they even needed to mention it lyrically.
The other day, a drummer told me that he was
It's like we've transcended to another plane of existence, man. I love this. Is this their like an attempt to fabricate some sort of Eastern sounding instrument, sitar? George Harrison, I'm looking at you, because that, it's pretty on the nose, if that's what they're doing here. It kind of has that kind of sound, at least just for a moment there. To me, it did. I don't know. I'll have to listen to it a bit more. But this whole interesting section where they're kind of tinkering and toying around with different sounds that pan in and out. Very psychedelic, very immersive, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And it sounds like George on the rejoin there vocally. I loved that part. That part was great. What was that? Over a minute of just really interesting tinkering around with sounds and these production methods of phasing in and out and panning and stuff. It just sounded like I could have gone another 2.5 minutes of just hearing them continue to do that. And oddly, that tink, 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 tink of that lone keynote, which I think was higher the first time and maybe a little lower the second time, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. That was enjoyable too. It was just like a little knocking at the door. There was this like really interesting snare pattern that was peppered in there for a moment, and that sort of like once that came to a halt, it was sort of like, well, here you go, guitar, you kind of shine here on this last leg. And again, like sometimes instruments connote visuals. We've talked about it a lot with different experiences we've had on there. There's something so akin to lighting with this track, and specifically in how the guitars have this kind of shimmer to them and this brightness, and when they move it feels like they're like the lights are fading in or sparkling and reflecting off things, and that's so it lends it so well to the psychedelic theme that they have going on. I mean, this song is very psychedelic. I know I mentioned it before, but now that we're at the end here, I'm gonna go on one for a second. But like, so the guitar, absolutely psychedelic. That kind of like that engaging bass line and how ever present it was, also psychedelic in the way that it can like have this trance like effect, and the textures and the layering and the production of the vocals and just the delivery of them, like these stretched out that over top or underneath the main vocal track, and or starting halfway through a vocal line of the the lead singer and coming in and kind of like lifting it and giving it this, I don't know, this anti-gravity feeling in the vocal track was also very, very psychedelic. I mean, when you have a song that sounds like it was literally kind of ripped from, and then it tinkered with, but ripped from that era of the Beatles that I alluded to, anywhere from like late 65 to, I would say, honestly, they really ran with it. But the early days of them, this has more of that to it than it does, like, I don't know, Magical Mystery Tour. But definitely around like the Revolver, Rubber Soul days, that's what this kind of has the sound of to these ears. But also with how jangly and bright the guitar was, it did remind me a lot of Peter Buck. Now, as more and more of this psychedelia enveloped the song, the more I got pulled to the Beatles comp. But for me, I do hear a little bit of REM in here as well, which is an interesting dynamic. I'm sure if John would agree with that, I would think it would be one of the reasons why he likes the song so much, because those are two of his, I don't want to put numbers on them or anything, but I would assume that they are among his favorite bands with how much we've talked about them and on and off camera. And I'm a diehard Beatles fan. I'm a big REM fan too. Thanks to John for filling in the gap of the early days with me on a lot of their catalog. But I can understand why he would gravitate to this. Um, Man, I could put this on and kind of lose myself. I wish there was like, I think this is the extended mix. I could deal with another extension. Just keep building on to it. Yeah, it really worked for me. I'd be interested to learn more about this, kind of when it came out, and if any of my comps get affirmation through some of the background information that John divulges when we chop this up a bit more. So let's do just that. Let's get back to him.
Norman St. John Stevens, he's back. So you've had a listen to I Know You Well, extended mix by Shaq. Um, please tell us what you think.
I really enjoyed this track a lot. This is pretty high up there for me, at least this so far this year in songs that you've offered me. And uh
I wonder why that could be. But anyway,
yeah, yeah, we will get into that. I will say, how do I put this? These types of songs are the songs that made me wish that you could control how long a mouthful of mushrooms lasting effects would have. Like if it only lasted 5 or 10 minutes, I really wish I would have had them before listening to this song because it is very psychedelic and it's a lot of fun to listen to, not only through the instrumentation but what they do in production and the choices they make and how they've arranged all of this. That was checked a lot of boxes for me, I'll say. It begins with the crackling sound of a record, which ties in with the visage that we get right out of the gate. And this is then joined by this like some ethereal, resonant, sparkling keynotes. I think they're keys anyway. I had to pull it back to figure out what. I still don't know what form of keys they were, but it sounded like they were generated from keys. And it comes off as like the shimmering of lights, as a lot of this track will do, which lends into the psych. I mean, God, what from lava lamps to fucking mirror balls. These all they're all things that create that fuck with light and mess with your optics, and I'm getting that just from listening to music, which is great. I love songs that can capture visuals like that. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this channel, but especially when it relates to this sort of psychedelic genre that we're dealing with here. After about 15 seconds of this, there is a preliminary smack of the drum, just a half beat before the rest of the band joins in, and when they do, it feels like we are in the throes of some oddball collaboration between Peter Buck and Paul McCartney. The guitars have enough jangle and shimmer to them that it definitely reminds me of REM, but that bass is late 65, early 66 Beatles. Boom, right in that pocket. Yeah, I'm gonna name some examples, so I don't want you to steal my
I go and say it, and then I'll say.
Okay. I grappled with it at first because I pinpointed the era, but I'm like, first song that came to mind was Taxman. The second song that came to mind, just based off a little bit of the bass movement, but not enough of it to really scream this, was Day Tripper, and then Paperback Writer. And I realize that they're all written in that wheelhouse, but it is Taxman that is the one that really sticks with me. That's what this sounds like, particularly through that McCartney-esque bass. But go on, please add on to what I'm saying.
I will disagree with you. And it's really interesting because a lot of critics have said Taxman, and
Really?
it's not. And it's not. It's Tomorrow Never Knows. Doom,
Ah,
doom, doom. It's exactly that. If you
okay.
listen to it again, but I'd be happy with just the word revolver because that covers everything.
Yes, I said, yeah, which is weird because of late, I'd say over the last 2 months, at different times through songs that either you've offered to me or maybe they've been some suggestions as well. We've lived in my, at least in my head, we've lived in this era of the Beatles. When
Yeah,
anything has connoted Beatles over the last couple months, it has been Rubber Soul, Revolver, Revolver, Rubber Soul. Where are we
yeah.
here? And it's that era of the Beatles that's fucking singing through this track. It's not so far into the rabbit hole that we've reached magical mystery tour levels of crazy psychedelia, but that maybe they're true. The best form of them doing psychedelia stuff was the early the not it's not early for them, but this sort of the when they first started to experiment outside of like love songs and pop songs, you know what I mean, which are great, but this is a whole nother beast, and it feels like this is firmly where we are with the addition of like, and it's funny because they played the shit out of Rickenbackers even during this era. But Peter Buck's Rickenbacker is what comes to mind when I heard this guitar right out of the gate. It wouldn't surprise me if this was recorded on a Rickenbacker because of the shimmery nature of that sound. The vocals then join, and there's a bit of this here we go, mid to late 60s psychedelia to his delivery. Perhaps it's the way he stretches out certain words that informs my opinion here, but not to beat the whole McCartney Beatles horse to death. But I hear late 65, 66 Beatles in the vocal delivery as well as the guitar. And again, that's never a bad thing, as you suggested. I would have no issue with. You were right. Uh, Speaking of the vocal performance, there are some nice airy harmonies throughout the verse as well, and they sound great. And one, they sound great, but two, they add or fortify this psychedelic sound by adding like ooh, and just the texturing and the layering and even the panning of how it comes in and goes out is very like mind altered in its effect. So I enjoyed that very much. These vocals coupled with the and you can correct me here, the Taxman-esque bass line, that ever-present snare hi-hat beat by the drummer, and the jangly swirling guitar motifs, they all shimmer throughout, also adding to the overall psychedelic feel of the track. And then around the 120 mark, there is this subtle little fill by the drums before the music briefly cuts out as the singer begins the lines to the next stanza of the verse, opening with, "Then I ring to find you." And I gotta be honest with you, with the trance-like nature of that bass line and all the other stuff, I'm only catching like sparse bits of like lines here and there. It did sound like it was a love-ish song or a song about obsessing or thinking about somebody. Um, then this verse is followed by another interesting portion that feels almost like a dreamscape. It's very hazy in its sound. The twangy guitar notes kind of cascading over the soundscape. And then there appears this hazy whirring sound that develops halfway through the motif whilst the singer offers up, "The other day that a drummer told me that he was dreaming," which is then followed up by a yelp. And I just thought it was so funny that, and again, emblematic of how good they are at creating a sound that connotes a word or a feeling or this essence that they then deliberately reference lyrically, because I was already in the dreamscape headspace, and then he drops this thing about a dream, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you just tied that up quite nicely. Um, I must acknowledge that the allusion to dreaming was conveyed through the music before even directly being alluded to. So that's just, hats off to them. That whirring that I alluded to continues on and now has taken on this sort of insulated, metallic, echoey sound that feels like a literal trip down that aforementioned rabbit hole. And it would appear we've transcended some line of demarcation in the track as we hit this odd echo around the 225 mark. And from it emerges that bass line and a pretty simple beat over top of which the band paints all of these really interesting sounds that seem to fade in and out. So again, shout out to the production and the way this was all assembled and the effects that it added. At times there was the two different times I think, and perhaps two different notes, but the same technique of just this steady staccato kind of plonking on one singular key, which is like, someone knocking on the door of your third eye, waiting for it to open up as you're listening to all this trancy stuff. And I really enjoyed it. I was so immersed in it that I thought, if this is the extended portion of the song, just keep building extensions. Treat this thing like the Winchester Mansion or whatever that thing is, where the lady went crazy and just started building all these extra rooms on the mansion because she thought she was haunted by the ghosts of all the people who were killed by her
Yeah,
family's gun company. I would just like keep adding on, keep adding on. If this thing went on for another 15 minutes, this total song went on for another 15 minutes, it would be one of those rare cases where I would broach no issue with the length of the track. I just loved it. So yeah, really, really great stuff. This continues for a bit until a small bass bump, as you've coined the term, John, hits at the 4 minute mark, which then ushers in these vocals once again. And man, I don't know if it's the bass line playing tricks on me, but when he came in again, he reminded me of, like, because earlier in the song, I think I mentioned this in the reaction, and then here again, he has this George Harrison like sound to his voice, as well, which is also tripping me up a bit, and again throwing me in this mid '60s Beatles thing. But yeah, very Harrison-esque in his delivery, and he says, "Let me say how it could be." And then there's a ton of vocal layering again in this portion, really amplifying that dream state psychedelic blueprint of the track. And there's texturing abound throughout this portion, and it even sounds like we get treated to a guitar or some instrument doing a like sort of a half-hearted impression of a sitar. And again, like, like, could there be any more George Harrison flat? Like, I know I said Taxman, and you've put that to bed, but I'm already in a
my
Harrison
opinion.
head.
It's just
I'm
my
Yeah,
opinion,
no,
but
and it's a good. I'm gonna go back and check it out. You could very well be right. I think you probably are. But my headspace is already, like, not only in Beatles but drilled down to Harrison coupled with
yeah,
McCartney's bass. And here you have the sitar, and we all know, sitar, Harrison, Beatles. You do the math.
yeah.
So here we are. Here I am as I'm listening to this, loving every bit of it. And there is a semi-garbled spoken word line for a fleeting moment that I didn't catch any of. And then the drums ramp up, and there's this really interesting snare pattern that they are teasing at this point. Wish it lasted longer. It doesn't, but it transitions back to this very, Buck-esque guitar tone that's going on, shimmering lights abound. Um, and yeah, it comes to an end. So I think um, it was a great listen. And I know that this horse has been bludgeoned enough times to account for multiple dead horses, but my God, the overtly Beatles-inspired sounds throughout this track are both unavoidable and undeniable. And as a total Beatles mark, who am I to judge or cast aspersions? I mean, this went over a treat for me, given that that's what I like. So I also reiterate the guitars had enough jangle in them to also remind me of REM. And these are two bands that I like a lot or am deeply in love with. So why wouldn't I like this? And during the reaction, I said the same of you. I said, John and I like the Beatles about the same much, but he loves REM even more than I really, really appreciate and like REM. So this must have gone over a treat for you the first time you heard it as well. So I can totally understand why this would be a song that you not only liked, but then would offer up to me. So, tell me a bit more about this band, John, and this undeniable connection to the Fab Four.
Thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, interesting stuff. Now, I have to warn you, we're going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole here with this
Oh,
band and
more
members
rabbit
of.
holes.
Yeah, so before forming Shack, Michael and John Head, brothers, were in the cult 1980s band, The Pale Fountains. I'm going to give you some of their stuff as well.
Okay.
Really nice. They released two albums, as Pacific Street in '84 and From Across the Kitchen Table in '85. However, really critically acclaimed, the albums reached what is classified officially as dizzying heights of 85 and 94 in the UK albums
Oh
chart.
my
So the
God.
band ended around 86, and they came home with their tails between their legs from London back to their hometown of Liverpool.
Oh,
Um,
that might explain
uh,
some of the sound.
Bassist and founding member Chris Biffa McCaffrey then sadly died of a brain tumor in '89, just a few years after the band broke up.
Oh, wow.
The Head brothers sort of emerged as Shaq, signing to the Ghetto Recording Company, which was the home of record producer Ian Broody, who we talked about, who also had this solo project called The Lightning Seeds. Shaq's first album, Zilch, was released in '88, but was neither critically acclaimed or commercially successful. It's quite a good album, actually. A bit unfair there. So then after that, I Know You Well, and it's kind of a transitional stepping stone between the sounds the bands will do. So they only did this sound with this single. The stuff before is like C86 indie jangle pop.
Yeah.
The stuff after this is masterful acoustic-y based rock, sort of grown up Britpop. Really good. And this is just a stepping stone in between. And I thought, shit, let's do this. So the original rhythm section in Shaq from the first album, Justin Smith on bass and Mick Hurst on drums, they left shortly after the release of that album, Zilch. So we now have this, the band's profile for this song is Mick Head, vocals, guitar, John Head, guitar, Pete Wilkinson, bass, and Alan Wills, drums. And the new members on bass and drums, Wilkinson and Wills, really helped shift the sound away from this jangle pop towards this more psychedelic. It's quite unique, actually. So it's a psychedelic, Mersey-inspired Manchester groove. So it was 1990 this came out, right at the height of Manchester sort of blooming. And you've got this very, Liverpool sounding Manchester track with loads of these 60s pop hooks, but with this like contemporary baggy sort of rhythm beat to it. Really, really nice. And this extended cut just takes it a bit further and stretches it out and becomes a bit more hypnotic. And it predates a lot of the Manchester sound that came after it. And according to critics, it remains an essential hidden classic of British indie music. So the track sort of seamlessly blends the different eras and the alternative and psychedelic rock. And here, listen to this. It's really nice to be reminded just how good psychedelic rock can be. It's one of those things that's in small doses as well. Like, unless you're on something, half an hour of this is about as much as I can handle, unless I'm on something. But just like stepping into this is fantastic.
Yes.
So, according to this write-up here, built over driving bass-heavy rhythm reminiscent of the Beatles' Taxman. And the song instantly locks into a loose limb and a danceable gait. Jangling neo-psychedelic guitar lines weave in and out, creating a shimmering wall of sound. So there are all your REM references as well.
Yes, yeah.
Peter
And
Buck.
also, what you had said that they had sounded like leading up to this before they transitioned to the more adult contemporary kind of sound. That makes that's the only through line I can see from how you described their earlier stuff to this track right here. So at least there is that connection point, this sort of jangly 80s guitar. And Peter Buck was the face of that, if you ask me. So that makes sense.
Mick Head's vocal harmonies are beautifully human, purposely unpolished and loose, excuse me, and deeply emotive rather than sterile or overly precise. At the end of the track, Michael Head's spoken vocal line is "All God's children gotta have their freedom," which is a direct echo of the same line that Arthur Lee speaks at the end of the song "The Red Telephone" by Love, off that group's album Love Forever Changes. On the flip side of it, so this was released as a single, and then it was released as a 12-inch a couple of years later. And on a 12-inch, on the other side, they're both A's sides. It's the same song, but it's the If You Want It mix. And that consists of basically the very, very famous bongo percussion loop from Apache by the Incredible Bongo Band. And they also directly lifted dialogue from the intro skit from Dead of Soul from 3 Foot High and Rising. It's just really odd. And then the bass line as well. And then his singing over the top. So it's a proper sort of weirdly cobbled together sort of remix thing. I don't know if it's successful or not. I'm not sure. I think in the right mood it is, but only about 6 times out of 10, I'd say. This, what you listen to, is definitely the more successful mix, as it were. So, lyrics, not a lot, but get into it. Let me say how it could be, because I know you well and I feel it's all right. There's a plan to get you, and I know you well and I think it's all right. And I gotta get it to ya tonight. Then I rings to find you, because long it's such a long way to get back to. It's a new surrounding, and I know it well, and I know it's all right. And I gotta get the feeling tonight. The other day, then, a drummer told me that he was dreaming. Ow, it says here. And then, ow, again after that, instrumental there. Let me say how it could be, because I know you well, and I feel it's all right. There's a plan to get you, and I know you well, and I think it's all right. And I gotta get it to you tonight. All God's children got out their freedom. So after this, their follow album in 91 was called Water Pistol. Now in 91, this definitely predates Britpop. So it was recorded at London Star Street Studios and at Chapel Studios in Lincolnshire. Shortly after they'd finished recording Water Pistol and it was complete, the Star Studio burnt down and most of the tapes were destroyed.
Ooh.
The only remaining DAT of the album was in the possession of the producer, Chris Allison, who didn't know about it. He was in LA. When he returned from LA, he found out about it. It turned out that he'd left his copy in his hire car back in LA. It was found weeks later after a friend's search. But by this point, the record label Ghetto had folded.
Oh.
So the record was out without a distributor. So Shaq then split. Wilkinson joined fellow Liverpudlian John Power, formerly of the Lars. So you've got these adjacent bands all in the same scene at the same time.
Yeah.
And they formed the successful Britpop band Cast. So you've got Shaq, you've got the Lars, you've got Cast. They're all coming out of Liverpool. The Head Brothers actually accompanied Love for a few touring dates in 92, which must have been wonderful for them. Water Pistol was finally released in 95 on a German independent record label. And the Enemy described Mick Head as a lost genius and among the most gifted British songwriters of his generation. The album was then re-released again with new artwork and CD and blah, blah, blah in 2007. So Mick Head went on to form Michael Head and the Stands with his brother John, and they won critical acclaim with their album Magical Word of the Strands in 1996, which is this kiddie here. And you'll get a bit of this as well, because it's well worth listening to. The Head Brothers, along with Ian Templeton, who drummed on that album, and bassist Ren Perry, reformed Shaq in 98, and they released the album HMS Fable in 99, which reached the top 25 on the UK albums chart. Really good album as well. Parry is replaced by, I mean, we got this rotating, stuffing of the bass and drums, basically. Parry was replaced by Guy Rigby on bass for the next album. Here's Tom with the Weather, 2003. And then Wilkinson rejoined in 2005, replacing the departed Rigby. Oh, their heads would be spinning by them outdoors, going backwards and forwards. The band then signed to Noel Gallagher's Sour Mash record label. In May 2006, they released the album The Corner of Miles and Gil, which is named after two of the Head Brothers' heroes, Miles Davis and Gil Evans. And then in 2008, the band reformed the Pale Fountains, two critically acclaimed live shows in Liverpool and London. And Michael Head then released a new project, Michael Head and the Red Elastic Band. Haven't got that on vinyl yet, on his own record label. So Mick Head is now leading that band to their 2022 album, Dear Scott, received a 4-star review in The Guardian and a 5-star review in Mojo magazine. It became Head's highest chanting album in the UK, peaking at number 6. The album was also number 1 in the UK independence charts. And in November 2022, Uncut and Mojo published their 75 best albums of 2022 year-end lists, whereas the former, Uncut, ranked it as the 3rd best album of the year, and Mojo ranked it as the best album of the year.
Wow.
So they did all right with that. So yeah, and that's the story of the Head Brothers. And this is a weird little stepping stone in the middle of all that. But
Yeah.
it's such a successful iteration of the sound they're trying to capture. And hearing it in 1990 as well, it was just a treat. It really was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, it sounds like they're capable of tapping into all these different sounds, like, and genres, and being kind of like a chameleon in that regard, which is, I'm sure some people who really liked one iteration of it will be turned off or whatever, but as far as survival as a relevant musician is concerned, you want that skill, you want that talent, and here they are putting out stuff just a couple years ago where the laudits are, up there.
Yeah.
So,
I would say at the back of everything they do, there's this kind of, however it comes out, there is this kind of grounding in sort of Mersey beat sound.
yeah,
And that just
from
cuts
that
through in their
days.
craft of Scotland. Yeah, their
That's
songwriting.
yeah.
Yeah. So really cool. I'm really glad you like this. We should do some more the Head Brothers and their adventures. And I'll end up as a playlist of 4 or 5 tracks at least
Cool.
decent. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, Andy.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
wrapping things up. Folks out there, please tell us what you think. If you liked a little bit of the old psychedelia, um, crossed with a bit of baggy, then please slap your hands down on that like button. You can't miss it. It's the big one that looks like a carnation. And show your appreciation. It won't squirt water at you, honestly. And also drop some comments. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you think. Do you remember this? I'm sure there's plenty of you that remember the Pale Fountains and can offer up some suggestions of songs. I've got a couple vinyl here, but yeah, I'd love to hear what you think as well. And also Michael Head's other stuff. Yeah, again, we'd love to hear what you say. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everybody to support the channel. So please hop on board and build our numbers up so that we can eventually qualify for Europe. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you in the next episode of the Audiophiles.
Take care, guys.